This clip of the Texas Bucket List is brought to you by Spirit of Texas Bank, Slovacek Sausage, Germania Insurance, TX Burger, and RV Source. Howdy, and welcome to the Texas Bucket List, the show dedicated to everything there is to see, do, and experience right here in the Lone Star State. My name is Shane McAuliffe, and this week we start things off by visiting a native Texan with a serious passion for TV history. And once you walk into his TV museum, you understand. Along County Road 2127, just south of Longview, you'll find a big building that happens to be broadcasting signals into space.
You listen to QXFM 101.9, 105.7, 103.9, and we're sitting here in East Texas having a great time.
That's where you'll find Chuck Conrad, running his radio stations out of his Chalk Hill hideout.
It is a sizzling 99 degrees outside right now. Let's listen to a bit more music. Maybe it'll cool you down.
But if you take a look around his massive studio, there's much more than just the most up-to-date broadcasting equipment. There's also quite a few pieces that signed off a long time ago.
Right now it's kind of crowded, as you noticed.
To say Chuck is crazy for cameras would be sort of an understatement. He's got a serious bias towards broadcasting equipment, and it all started at a young age.
There's a few radios and things around here that I've had since I was a kid. I know there's one out in the main lobby that I paid $2 for at a thrift shop back about 1960 or so.
That love for sound led to a career in audio, and over the years he started collecting equipment that had seen its share of stories.
You don't really notice things gathering in your closet until you go to move. That's always one of those critical moments. I think it is for everybody, and you go, I didn't know I had that many socks. Well, I didn't know I had that many TV cameras. So.
Once he sold his business, he gathered his gear and officially started
the Texas Museum of Broadcasting and Communications. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, I would say so. With TV, radio, and broadcasting equipment that spans several decades, it's almost hysterical how huge some of these necessary pieces of production equipment were. So this is the mobile unit. This is what.
Yeah, this is mobile. This is, you know, and this could be replaced by an iPhone, and the iPhone would be in color.
Yeah.
This is black and white.
Black and white.
Living black and white.
So you could shoot a TV show on this, and back then.
Yeah, and this thing incidentally has a giant cable that's about that big around that goes back to wherever the camera control units are, and there's power supplies and a whole bunch of other stuff, which I have back here. They're rather large, to say the least.
The official TVL camera.
Yeah, it's almost a perfect fit.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Look, now we can do news.
Hey,
again.
yep. It's a working camera now.
Today, you can have thousands of songs on your phone, but not too long ago, equipment with a lesser capacity took up an entire wall.
Each song or each commercial would be on a cartridge like so, and you'd have them all queued in here. You'd have maybe one rack that's all commercials and one rack that's all your public service announcements, and another one that's the liners, you know, the things that go that ID'd the station, jingles or whatever, and then maybe in this deck, which they call a carousel because it rotates, you'd probably have your top 40 songs in it, or however many it would hold. I think it only holds about 24. And then the rest of the reel-to-reel machines, you put your instrumentals and your flashbacks and stuff like that on. And it would sit there and rock back and forth and play all this stuff.
And this is how old?
This is from the 70s.
From the 70s.
Yeah,
so
but
they were of how far we've come in 40 years.
Well, that's true. I mean, now, you know, most stations run off of a computer.
Yeah.
The entire music library is on a hard drive somewhere. And usually not that big a hard drive either. It doesn't take that much space. And they just sit there and play. I mean, I've got 2 of them running in the back room right now. But carrying your iPhone in is a lot easier than dragging one of these things in.
Yeah. Chuck's collection doesn't just include the basics of broadcasting. He has something a bit bigger.
You have a bus.
Yeah, I have a bus. Not everybody has a bus, but not everybody has a place to put a bus. Is probably why most people don't have them.
So this is an original Dumont television bus.
They called it a telecruiser. That was their name for a TV mobile unit. They made, I think, 14 of them, as far as I can tell. It's been a real fixer-upper project.
I can imagine. Well, let's look inside.
Yep. Well, this is the interior of the telecruiser, and it's set up in its more or less 1960s style, not the original 1949. But
It It almost feels like NASA Mission Control.
Pretty much, yeah. I think it kind of looks a little bit like NASA Mission Control.
Back in 1949, this bus cost $94,000, but it could transmit pictures and sound over the air.
So there would be 6 guys working in this.
Yeah, pretty much it'd be 6 guys. There would be a director sitting over here, and he'd have a switcher, which he could switch between cameras. Normally they had 2 cameras. I think they could sometimes do 3. And there'd be a sound guy sitting over here at the soundboard behind you. And then there'd be an engineer up here whose job was to tweak the cameras and beat on them and make them get into submission to make pictures. And then there'd be a couple cameramen.
While you can get lost in the size and scope of these big pieces of equipment, you have to dial back a bit and think about the actual news events these pieces of metal, wires, and glass covered, the history they've been a part of.
They all have their own unique story, and there's a story behind almost every one of these. Some people find them fascinating, and some people find it really boring, but that's okay, you know.
It's hard to consider that history boring, especially when you can relate to that history. Chances are you've seen firsthand some of the images these cameras have broadcast to the world. A lot of this equipment came out of Dallas stations, and KRLD was broadcasting live during its coverage of the Kennedy assassination.
If that KRLD camera over there was there when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot, I mean, that's kind of interesting all by itself, isn't it?
Every camera, tape deck, and microphone has a story. It may be the images it captured, or the people behind the camera, or even the folks who spoke into them.
Almost everybody watches TV. It's really how several generations have experienced the world. It's really true.
So why hold on to so much old and antiquated equipment? Well, it's a bit ironic when you think of the reason, but these things, these video and audio oddities have had their time to tell the story. Now, they are the story. The build-up to the generations who can now get any information they need at their fingertips. The same generation that inspired Chuck to tell this tale.
I was explaining how people used to watch the radio. I mean, people really did sit around and watch the radio back in the 1930s because there was no television. And I was explaining that a lot of people didn't have indoor plumbing, and a lot of people didn't have electricity, and a lot of people didn't have telephones. And he stopped me on the phone thing, and he said, if they didn't have phones, how'd they get on the internet? He may be the inspiration for a lot of this because he's never known a time in his life without a smartphone or without the internet. It's always been there as far as he's concerned, but it hasn't always been there, and I think people need to know how things were done in the past. That way they can have a better idea how to do things in the future.